Hey everybody, gather round. HOS4A2's back in town. Talking horror, guts, blood, and gore. We know you're gonna scream for more. The podcast for the recently deceased. Monsters, mayhem, fear unleashed. It's podcast for the recently deceased. We are slashers, vamps, and goats at beast. Silver screens and cursed tapes, jump scares that will contemplate, special guests and spooky lore. Turn up the volume and lock your door. The podcast for the recently deceased. Horror nerds on your souls, we feast. It's podcast for the recently deceased. So grab your stake and call a priest.
Welcome back to another episode of the podcast for the recently deceased. I am your host, the boss, HOS4A2, and with me is Stephen Anthony from Dark Claw Studios.
Hey guys.
Stephen Anthony. All right. Tonight we are going to be discussing the Shudder exclusive, The Rule of Jenny Penn, written and directed by James Ashcroft. Looks like his second feature. Confined to a secluded rest home and trapped within his stroke-ridden body, a former judge must stop an elderly psychopath who employs a child's puppet to abuse the home's residents with deadly consequences. Starring Geoffrey Rush and John Lithgow. And I think I have to say that again. I think starring Academy Award winner Geoffrey Rush and Academy Award winner John Lithgow.
Yeah.
I mean, when I saw the poster for this movie, I was like, oh, I'm in. I don't even need to know what it's about.
Mm-hmm.
Putting these two guys in a movie, namely a horror movie, oh my god.
So good.
So good. I've loved John Lithgow my whole life. Geoffrey Rush, I think... I don't know if he's only won one Academy Award, but I'm pretty sure he won Best Actor for Shine, where he played as David Helfgott, this pianist, and it was like his life story biopic. It was, absolutely amazing movie. Lithgow, no stranger to horror, just did the Pet Sematary remake.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he was the neighbor. And before that, Dexter Season 4, which, if you haven't seen Dexter, is the best season, and definitely because he's the villain.
I have a quick story about Dexter. A best friend of mine told me that I had to watch it, and I was like, why? And, then he was like, oh, because you're a lot like Dexter, and then I watched it, and when I saw the guy was a murdering psychopath, I was like, so I have the personality of a murdering psychopath.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Nice.
It's a good compliment.
Yeah, sure.
He only kills bad guys,
Yeah, I mean, Dexter, that was that thing. It was everybody at that time was falling into like the Venom, Punisher, anti-hero thing where, okay, if you're going to do bad shit, do it to bad people. And it's
right.
like, can we get a little bit more originality in our scripts? So I watched the first 4 episodes, wasn't terribly impressed. But because of Dexter, I do remember, just like he did, where he had like a thing, because I don't give a shit. Whenever people say, hi, how are you? You're talking about my favorite subject. You're talking about me. Great. Let me answer that in detail. And then I got to remember after, like Dexter, to say, oh, and how are you? But I don't really care.
Yeah. See, because Dexter, to me, especially if you watch all of it, which I did, he's way less of a psychopath than he is just your common sociopath.
And people like you, Haas, know the difference between psychopath and sociopath, where I have to Google it.
That's correct. All right. So, The Rule of Jenny Penn. I got to say, it's hard to watch. It's hard to watch. The performance is obviously phenomenal. You're not going to miss. Did I want more? I kind of did. I kind of expected, demonic doll, some kind of paranormal aspect.
It's right there.
It's
right
no,
there.
but it's
It brings you right up to it.
Yeah, yeah. It brings you to the line, but it stays grounded in reality, and for that, probably makes the movie even more terrifying in that it makes you
it's very possible.
It makes you scared to be old. It makes it makes you think, wow, this could be happening to my great grandparents or my grandparents if they're in this kind of facility right now, and no one would know and no one would care because everybody's making 16, 18, 20 bucks an hour, and
if that much.
And the overnight staff, which gets me through the whole movie, like, where's the fucking overnight staff? And you see them once, and it's when like one of the characters is
Dave.
I just didn't want to say it because we're not quite there yet.
No spoilers yet.
Getting a little ahead of myself, but like
a little spoiler there, Haas.
Yeah, he walks past the bushes, and they're standing by a garbage can, like chain smoking, and you're just like, that is what the night shift would do. That's why this shit goes down.
It is. There's one scene. This is not a super spoiler. I'm not ruining anything. Where an attendant walks by and she's asking one of the residents in this senior facility, "So you good? You're good? Oh yeah, you're good." Barely slows down.
Yeah.
What if this guy said, "No, I'm not good. You need anything?" What if he said, "Yeah, I do need something"? She was on her way, and that's just one of the repetitive. You get that a lot of different ways, a lot of different times throughout the movie. But I would say that everybody has a universal fear of dying, universal fear of aging. This movie will make you realize is the exact same thing. It just happens a whole lot slower.
Oh yeah, no, that once again, there are plenty of slow burns out there, slow burn horror movies. This is not a slow burn horror movie. Once he gets there, it's horrific. Every day of his life is a horror show.
It amps up. There are scenes where the horror and the horrific aspect of the nature of this guy's life, it definitely gets amped up from scene to scene, but that'll definitely involve spoilers. So I can't wait much longer.
So, right.
Spoiler warning.
All right, here we go. I'm going to wrap it real quick with, if misery loves company, so does this movie. I gave it an 8 out of 10. What do you think, Stephen?
I'm very generous with my ratings. This movie, if I don't give it a 9, what movie am I going to give a 9 to? Maybe if I get stingy at the end of it, I'll come down to an 8.5. Right now, I'm going to start off at a 9.
All right, sounds good. At this moment, we are moving into spoiler territory as we deep dive into the rule of Jenny Penn. If you haven't seen the movie, go watch it. Come back, check it out, see what we have to say. Or if you don't give a shit about spoilers, just, stay glued to the YouTubes.
Or the Spotify, or the Apple.
Or or whatever. If you're listening instead of watching,
wherever you're at.
Yeah, whatever. Okay. So, right from the beginning, right, we have Geoffrey Rush, who is amazing, and he's a judge, and he's sentencing this guy,
this pedophile,
right? And I love his line of like how your counsel tried to make us believe that you're sorry after you've done it again and again and again and again. 8 counts of molestation, sexual contact with an underage person. I sentenced you to 16 years. Blah blah, and then he goes on and on and on, and then he has a stroke. He has a stroke while it's happening. He gets so emotional, so whatever, that it just triggers, this ticking time bomb that strokes are, and and we basically cut to him getting checked in.
So, just a couple of things that I just want to make some quick notes on. There is the mother of either one of the victims or some of the victims, and what really gives us an insight very, very early on. So we see him squishing this bug, and then we're going to see that later on because this moment is going to be a bookend for him at least in terms of what's going to happen in this movie. We'll get into that later. So we see that, this guy, at first he seems kind of disinterested. We see he's a judge. And then this woman is just, after he gives up to 16 years, for minor trafficking or minor assault, sexual assault on a minor charges, and everybody's like elated and happy. This guy's punitive. He abuses people. Maybe abuse is not the right word. He exploits people's weaknesses when it comes to their intellectual inferiority to him.
Right.
He is on a pedestal.
Yeah.
And that's going to come up later in the movie as well from a very surprising source. But he's up on a pedestal, and when the mother says, "Thank you," he stops what he's saying. There's a line that gets repeated in the movie, which I've watched it in subtitles the second time I watched it. In the absence of lions, hyenas will rule, or something to that effect.
Yep.
And she's like, "Wait, what?" And he's like, "I don't want you to thank me. Don't thank me. You're not a victim here. You're culpable."
You're culpable. You knew what was happening. You put your child in danger.
Mm-hmm.
You're culpable. He says it twice.
So we don't see it in the movie, and it's not explained. But I would not be surprised if that woman was dating that guy. How many times does that happen in real life?
Oh, sure.
Way too often.
Absolutely.
So I think that would definitely drive a judge who knew that, like, okay, this is my opportunity to nail this bitch. I've been wanting to say this to her the entire trial.
Right.
And that's what this movie does. It has you thinking, and it has you deep diving while you're watching, coming up with so many different scenarios, and it's so very well told. Can't say phenomenal performance enough, but if you say it, like once is not enough, and 1,000 is not, it's just, we could say phenomenal performance over and over and over again, and it would not be bullshit.
Yeah. What I like about John Lithgow's performance as opposed to Geoffrey Rush is obviously British or English, and he has his English accent, and he's not from New Zealand, and the film takes place in New Zealand. John Lithgow, who's an American actor, has an amazing New Zealand accent that he puts on, and like, I love the New Zealand accent. Any movie shot in New Zealand, you get a bunch of characters, except for Lord of the Rings.
I wasn't going to mention it.
Except for
let you do it.
Who have a bunch, you get a bunch of Kiwis in there, and they all have this great New Zealand accent, and most of the employees, all the employees, I think had it, and it was really good. Especially Geoffrey Rush's roommate had the accent as well, so it was very nice.
So I'm guessing most of the casting was done, in association with some kind of New Zealand film
commission.
Group.
Yeah.
Something like that. But the roommate, I'm wondering if he is indigenous, if he is Maori, and I apologize if I'm not saying that correctly. But at one point he does an indigenous dance.
Yeah.
So I want to Google and deep dive that, and that's, again, one of the things that this movie is going to make you do. It's going to get you invested, because the writing is just as awesome as the acting.
Oh, absolutely.
And holy shit, hold on to your seats, because it's good.
And also, not a lot of it. Like, the dialogue, there isn't very much, but what there is so good, so poignant. Lots of great literary references from Geoffrey Rush's character, because he's so intelligent, so well read, and he likes to show it off.
Because he's a prick.
Because he's a prick. He's not. Yeah, our protagonist is not a nice guy.
No, he's not.
But the editing and the cinematography, the combination of the two, you have beautiful, beautiful shots. Lots of winding, slow zooms, or zoom outs. Lots of very interesting camera angles, and then when scenes need to be chaotic or to show a lot of speed, like mixed with tension, the cutting, the work of the editor is so excellent. It really is a great representation of show don't tell, but also all of the telling, all of the dialogue is perfect. It's not like they they skimped on one thing to make the other thing great. Like everything about this movie works,
Mm-hmm.
to the benefit of the viewer.
Everybody who worked on this movie is a credit to their craft. Absolutely. I took note of the director of photographer's name, and I was going to mention it when we get to it later, not to skip ahead. There's two dancing scenes, and the camera work on those dancing scenes.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Something as simple as where to place the camera and where to hold it. And we'll talk about it. So well done, and it just adds so much to the movie, and it does so much showing and not telling. It's phenomenal.
Oh yeah. So, um, we meet his roommate first, who's an ex rugby player, a retired
Mm-hmm.
rugby player, and then we eventually will, there's a bunch of side characters, because there's a whole population of elderly.
Mm-hmm.
But then we meet John Lithgow's character, Dave Crealy, and Dave has this child's puppet. It's like the blandest, most boring bald baby doll
Mm-hmm.
with like the grippy hands.
Mm-hmm.
But he's got it as a puppet, right? And you're just like, okay, so he's a weird guy, and then he's doing some jerky things, like, oh, he's a jerk to all the residences. Maybe he's been here the longest, or he's just an a-hole. And
Every
then
family's got one,
yeah, and we get to
and in this case, every facility's got one.
yeah, we learn a little bit about the staff, and we learn a little bit more about the judge,
Mm-hmm.
and his roommate, and then in a very jarring, almost like jump scare reveal, he's in their room one night, and
Yeah.
yeah, and he's got the doll, and you're just like, what's going on? Like, because still at this point, nobody knows. Is this going to be a demon doll thing? Is this going to be paranormal?
Mm-hmm.
Is this going to go axe murder crazy? Or what? We don't know. And me personally, I was never grounded. I was always out in Fantasyland waiting for the turn, and the turn never came, and that was okay. In fact, I think
Mm-hmm.
it was better that the turn never came, and that this film stayed grounded in reality and in a world where this could happen, and that's what made it even scarier.
I was going to say that's what makes it so scary is that death is inevitable for all of us, and if you're lucky, it's going to be quick. War Games talks about surviving the nuclear holocaust for the horror of survival, and this is that on a way more utopian scale. It's like we have the horror of surviving in this paradise, this beautiful landscape, this beautiful facility, gorgeous building with symphonies playing. They're bringing in violinists and
Oh
they're bringing
yeah,
in pianists and comedians and whoever
yeah.
to entertain them, and their life just sucks. What a what a horrible existence. And at one point, Dave will say to, is it Stefan or Stefan?
The judge?
Yeah,
Stefan.
Stefan.
I think it's Stephen.
I'm gonna
Stefan.
say Stefan, but Dave says to Stefan that because we'll get into Dave's experience with how he's been dealing with people, how observant he is, but he says, this is going to be you. This guy right here, he's a turnip.
Right.
That's going to be you eventually. And so the fact that they didn't make that turn into the paranormal, but Stefan does have some stuff going on. So with this movie, you get to have your cake and eat it too. You get to have it be grounded in reality and feel all the fear from that. There will be some creepy shit with this doll.
This doll. So
That's going to come later.
Right. Well, so the first assault happens now, or that we get to see with Tony, the footballer or the rugby player. So he has the doll. He crawls up Tony's chest, and it's in his face, and he goes, "Who rules?"
Who rules?
And then Tony says, "Jenny Pen." And
Quickly.
Then he
knowingly.
he turns his arm over and he pulls the dress down a little bit, and he goes lick it.
Nope.
Or no, well, you don't hear anything on the first try.
Right, and that's what makes it so scary.
Yeah.
Is that he does. So Tony. Okay, so what happens is he's got the doll in his hand and he turns it over, and Tony reflexively kisses/licks Dave's arm where the doll's asshole would be.
Right.
And it just happens.
Yeah.
So when you watch it a second time, and this just happens, it's like, oh shit, the horror that's there is that this is Tony's routine.
Yeah.
Tony's been through this. He knows the deal. He knows what's up. He knows what he has to do. And it isn't until what I call Who Rules 2.0, where John Lithgow now verbalizes it and says, lick her asshole.
Lick her asshole.
So,
and he says it a few times. And that's like, and when it happens, you're just like, this is fucked up.
So fucked up.
So fucked up.
So fucked up.
And so then after Tony does it, he takes the doll, the doll's going to have a hard plastic head, and he just like, he uses it to like kind of bash and mess with Tony's genitals as like a torture. And then he just does it, and he laughs, and he does it, and he laughs, and then he stops. And then, the judge, Stefan, is over there pressing the nurse call button, and he just kind of points at him and leaves, and the camera pans out to reveal that the nurse call button has been unplugged. So like, so you know
I can
that
testify to real life. Nurses never answer that fucking button, ever.
Well, he unplugged it and then sat there and stared at them until they woke up, like that. So like, if you rebuild the scene, because we get the jump scare of the main character waking up and seeing him sitting there staring at them. But then when you get the realization, the zoom out, and you're like, oh, well, he came into the room, he unplugged everything, he probably set some stuff up for fun, and then he sat there and waited because he's a sick fuck.
Dave is a sick fuck, and maybe I missed it both times, but I think when we first see him, the judge wakes up in the middle of the night before he tortures Tony, and Dave is there at the door, and we don't see Jenny yet. I think Jenny gets introduced, the doll Jenny Penn gets introduced the next time we see Dave. And that's one of the horrific aspects of this movie, is like the things that we accept as normal. So in a facility like this, where we infantilize the elderly, who we should be respecting and giving reverence to, we infantilize them, and they do things like they say, "Hi, Jenny," and they play into his bullshit.
Right.
He weaponizes that, and he uses that infantilization as both a sword and shield, where he gets to hit people, torture people, and torment people with this doll, and he uses it as a shield from the members of the staff, where, oh, it's just Dave. He harmless little Dave walking around with a cute little doll in his hand. Try to take that doll away. You'll find out what happened. Because one of the care attendants did try, and it didn't work out too well for her.
Also, every time he gets caught, the other victim gets blamed, because he just starts screaming or crying, and everybody else is just like, "What did you do? Why did you upset Dave? Like what happened?" And Dave will lie, and they'll believe him. I like the reveal, probably towards the end, 3/4 at least, where you see the photos with the years on them.
Loved that sequence.
Yeah. So you don't know when he became a patient, but he was staff at some point.
Yep.
Because he's in all the staff photos, all the way back to like a CG rendering.
1968,
of him very young. And
is it a CG rendering, or is it John Lithgow's actual photos that they just photoshopped in? And it's like, can we do some kind of treasure hunt of John Lithgow's past photos?
It looked like a bad CG job, so I would assume that they maybe de-aged him from a photo.
I mean, he gets younger and younger and younger. And I mentioned to you before we started shooting, is that I have a Stephen King conspiracy theory about this movie. That either the director, the writer, or the executive producers wanted to pepper in some Stephen King type stuff to get that recommendation, to get eyeballs. First of all, this movie deserves the eyeballs, deserves all the eyeballs. But this is this scene where we go back and we look in time. For me, it was seeing Pennywise in the old pencil sketchings in Derry, Maine. It was flipping through that old history book and seeing that, and he just gets younger and younger and younger and younger. Dave likes it here. He knows it here. This is his home. And when Stefan comes in and starts using his expansive intellect and verbose language and such, Dave shuts that shit down. and challenges him and says, "I'll be seeing you tonight." When Stefan tries to show what a obnoxious prick of a judge he can be, that shit doesn't matter over here. We're not in judge. We're not in court.
Right, right.
Where have I been? This is my court.
This is my house. Yeah, like
Mm-hmm.
you can't just come in here and yeah, exactly. That's and Tony was his target and always was his target, but he quickly turned it on to the judge.
Tony says something great that first night where he gets where Stefan sees him getting tortured, and he says, it used to be a couple hits, and I'd have to kiss the dolls, whatever, and but now he's got a fucking audience.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So now there's animosity from Tony, his roommate, to Stefan because Stefan is giving him more of a reason to keep going.
Yeah.
So Tony's life is even worse now.
Yep. And Stefan isn't even friendly towards Tony because he's so above it. He's kind of classist. He even points out that he was a rugby player who was better off on the bench. Who when his team finally won, the coach said to him, "Thank you so much for not playing."
Right. I actually wrote that down, but God knows where it is in my notes. But yeah, he was like
he roasts this guy.
And that's when Dave sees him roasting him, where he talks about he's got like a lifetime of failure and regret that you can excavate. And his coach thanked him. Oh, thank you. We couldn't have done it with you.
Yeah, we couldn't have done it with you.
Oh my God! So yeah, this guy is not a nice guy, but yet at the same time, you never feel like, or I never felt like, oh, he deserved it. This guy's such an asshole. He deserves this. John Lithgow's Dave Crealy is that much of a fuck.
Yeah. So then he even he steals a bunch of stuff and he hides it in the judge's room, and then basically accuses or tells the staff, right, to get him in trouble. And then so the one woman he was stealing from, she's on his shit list too, and she's waiting for her family to pick her up.
I call her Christmas.
Yeah, forever. She's been there for who knows how long, but she's always waiting for her family to pick her up for Christmas. They'll be here any day now. They won't start without me. And Stefan says it's early October.
Yep.
But anyway, Crealy leads her out to the front gate, says, "Your family's right over there." She's like, "I can't see him." He's like, "Just go straight." He unlocks the gate because he's tall enough. He unlocks the gate, lets her out, and he says, "Just go, go, go," and she just goes. Go ahead.
There's a couple things here. We learned that he used to be staff, and
right.
So he has a staff key card, and I would be surprised if he ever gave up that staff key card. So she swipes his key card in her dementia, and he's like, he's not that concerned about it. He was like, "I'll just get it back later." And when he does get it back, he doesn't get his card back. He gets her card, which doesn't have the access that his card has, and he flips out.
Well, he can't even get into his room with it, and he also is like, "Oh, she's probably out there dead, so I'm gonna get in trouble."
There, it's one of the rare moments that we get to see Dave feeling the pressure. This movie, it doesn't have your usual horror movie comedic elements where you laugh, but there is one or two moments when I laughed inappropriately, and one of them is when he goes up to Christmas, I call her, and he knocks her on the head with Jenny Penn, and he asks her if anybody's home. And then in the next scene where we see her with Christmas, and he just decides, you know what, I'm done with this bullshit. This woman and her family just coming perpetually and forever. We're getting rid of her because he calls the shots. He's the puppet master.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Of all residents and staff.
It's his
domain.
Rest home domain. Yeah.
And so he, not to cut you off, Hoss, but he takes her out to the swamp, and he then has to go back and clean it up. And you see him, that's one of the things about this movie. I know I'm saying this for the third time, where it just makes you think and go down such a rabbit hole. Sometimes you just get into a mess and you're just cleaning something and you're cleaning something and you're cleaning something, and there's dirt here and there's dirt there. It's like, fuck, how long do I have to clean this? If it's your countertop or your sneakers after you step, whatever it is. And he is cleaning Jenny, and Jenny just does not want to get clean in the shower.
Yeah. I just couldn't help it, and this is where I say it was hard to watch. I just couldn't help but think about moments in my life where I had to visit my own family in places like that.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandfather had a hip surgery. He was in a place for like 2 weeks, and it was horrendous. And the place wasn't that bad, but while he was there, was so miserable. Every time you were there, like he was barely lucid, and he was just recovering from hip surgery, but he was in so much pain, and he wasn't taken care of, and he was just like howling in pain, and you could barely talk to him. When he was healed and left, it was like it never happened. It was a normal day. You could talk to him, everything was fine. There was no mental anything, no mental decline, no physical decline. He was back to normal. It was like that 2 weeks he was a different man in a different place.
Memory hold it. He put it in his own memory hole, because it's a different existence there. My last day job, I've been picking people up from these facilities for 10 years, and I was their comic relief and trying to say things if it could either be poignant, helpful, uplifting, whatever it could be. I've heard horror stories. So when I say nobody answers these nurses' call buttons, that's because I've had somebody tell me how they watched their roommate die and they're hitting the fucking button for 5-6 hours. And this movie touches on that so many times. There's a great scene, it's really understated, where Dave walks by and there is a resident who is dying.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't even notice it. I didn't realize how poignant it was the first time I watched it. Then I realized, because now I know who Dave is, and I'm rewatching it the second time. Watch this more than once, guys. And some guy's dying, and he just closes the door nonchalantly, goes about his day. Next scene.
Yep. Yeah. So he has that body count of 2 that we know of, right? So because that body definitely gets taken, and then we have the Christmas. We have Christmas.
A body count of 2 for the time that Stefan is there.
Right. For the time that we've been watching.
Countless before Stefan shows up.
And both of it as easy as breathing. Like it's not, he's not there. It's effortless murder. It's just part of his day.
And the horror of this movie is how entirely possible it is. Your suspension of disbelief is never challenged, like, oh, this would never happen. Fuck yes, it would happen. Stuff that's way worse would happen.
So we have a moment where we think the hero might triumph. We get he sees Dave use an inhaler.
Yep.
So he gets an idea. He waits for him to go for bath time, and he breaks into his room. And we don't know this.
We see it
at
later.
First, we see it later in a flashback. But he empties all of his inhalers, but just literally just sits there and just pumps them out.
Yep.
And he has a panic attack. He has asthma attack. And the one on him is empty. He goes to his room. Empty, and we see him go down. And now this was a very refreshing scene, and also another sad scene, because this is where you really get to feel Dave's impact on the entire community. He may only target a few of them, and he may just be a general nuisance to everybody else, but he makes everybody uneasy. So this morning, right? Everybody knows he had the attack, right? Because there was a big scene, right? And it's a meal time, and everybody's happy. Everybody's smiling. Characters who were miserable earlier, and then miserable again. Specifically, this one woman who's like reading a book, and it shows her like really happy reading the book in this scene. But then, he's not dead, so he comes back, and there's another altercation. But then the next time you see that old lady in the next breakfast scene, when they roll Stefan out, she's miserable again. like
Yeah.
in the book.
Dave is the dark cloud at the Royal Pines Muse Care facility. And so when we get this first reprieve from this asthma attack, I had asthma as a kid, so I know it can be. People have told me it can be fatal, but I know that if I ever had an asthma attack and I couldn't get to my inhaler, you just wait, and it will go away. So the entire time I'm thinking, oh no, this is not good enough. This is not good enough. This son of a bitch is not dead. And so we see everybody alive. We see people watching TV without Dave heckling at it, screaming, obnoxiously enjoying it so that nobody else can. And this guy is trying to get physical rehab, and we got to talk about that. Maybe now's a good segment.
Right.
But when Stefan, from time to time, will get his medical checkups, there's a little bit of a beautiful mind thing there that they did there, where we see reality for most of the movie up until this point from Stefan's point of view, and then we see it from reality's point of view, where he's drawing a clock on a piece of paper, and he hands it back, smug as ever, as indignant judge, smug prick as ever. And then we see it from the doctor's point of view. The numbers are not on the clock.
Yeah, it's all run down the side of the paper.
And the hands are going
yeah.
Buddy, where you going? So there is some cognitive decline there. It is happening. And Dave notices this, brings it to Stefan's attention. When it's not just an accusation, it's not just a torment, you're going to wind up like this vegetable. It's, I've seen this before. You just blipped, didn't you? Where were you just now?
Right.
So there's this chess match throughout the entire movie where it's point counterpoint between these two. And at some point it's never spoken, but Stefan realizes he has a certain window of time because Dave is healthy and Stefan is not. And part of his acceptance and hero's journey that he goes on in this movie is accepting where he's at and what life is for him.
Yeah, and just being okay with it. Which, we're in spoiler territory after the climax when everything kind of resolves itself. He is shown, eating his breakfast like normal.
Yep.
He is friendly with the people he's sitting next to. He has joined the community.
These are his people. This is his home. He can play backgammon here.
Right, they're playing backgammon, right, with a character we haven't seen before. It's just a stranger to the viewer, which makes it all the more important.
Yeah, because he's that much more open. But when we're going through it and we see the blipping happening while Dave is there, it adds urgency and another amping up of the horror quality to it. Like, you don't have time. You're going to deal with this now. It's like, oh, why don't you leave the haunted house? Because you can't. And his haunted house is his cognitive decline.
Yeah.
It's his mind. So if he doesn't deal with this now, he's going to deal with some shit. And if he has any conscience, and he does because he's a judge, he knows that everybody else is going to have to deal with this prick as well.
Right. So earlier Stefan finds Tony in the laundry room. And Tony's like, hey, don't make any noise. He doesn't know about this hiding spot. Just, just let this be, our thing. And so later, there's an altercation where Stefan, Dave is like molesting one of the female residents.
So bad.
And like her boyfriend, because it's always this one guy and her, he locks his wheelchair over on the other side of the room, and he plays music really loudly so he can get away with it.
Time to take your shower.
Yeah.
Plays the music.
Yeah.
And he slams the guy who has the clock.
The clock, yeah.
And on audio.
Right.
And it's the four of them. It's Dave, Stefan, this woman that he molests, takes advantage of. Yeah. It's very, very difficult to watch.
Yeah, he definitely takes her top down from the top down. And
he's going to keep going.
And Stefan this is like his breaking point. This is the top of the mountain. He gets up, he's got the stick, and he just hits him so hard. It actually probably shattered his forearm, because for the rest of the movie he's in a sling, and he puts Jenny Pen on the other hand.
Oh, I didn't notice that. I noticed the sling. I didn't notice that he switched hands. But I did notice the bruising. There's a scene
Oh, right,
where,
on the face, right?
yeah, some more guests are there. I think it's like a miniature symphony. And there's a couple scenes where Tony gets visited by his old rugby team, and he's there to be like an inspiring spokesperson. And Dave is watching him. And what's even not more creepy, but just creepy, this chess match that's going on. Stefan is watching Dave watch Tony. But at this scene, after the groping of, I think her name was Georgie, another Stephen King reference. After that scene, is Tony afraid of Dave, or is Tony deciding? So there's great dialogue in that laundry room scene where he's just speaking to him the way people would honestly speak in one of these facilities. You have treated me, to Stefan, you have treated me like shit. You really don't know how to treat a girl. You've been an asshole since you've gotten here. You think you got everybody pegged. And these are the things that allow Dave to continue operating the way that he's doing. But in this moment, after that horrific event, and Stefan comes back and Tony gives him some credit, you're tougher than you look. Tony, I think he's both. I think he is afraid, and I think he is deciding, I'm going to help. I'm going to do something about this.
Yeah, we got to do something about this. So we get to the climax where Dave's on the hunt. He can't find Tony. And he comes, and we see a shadow under the door, and he makes a noise at that laundry room. And we're like, oh no, he found Tony. And he opens the door, and there's the judge. And the judge just grabs him, knocks him down, and Tony's there too. Tony jumps on, and they just get on him, and the judge is choking him out. And then
grab the legs.
He says grab the legs. Yep, Tony grabs the legs, and they just strangle him to death in the laundry room.
And Tony gets his revenge here. I have it written down somewhere, but when he gets tormented, and those who rules, there's 3 of them.
Right.
And we got to talk about the third one. But the Who Rules segments are very, very hard to watch.
Yeah.
But when he torments Tony during the Who Rules moments, he asks him a question like, have you had enough? Have you had enough, old son? And so when in this, flash forward to Stefan and Tony fixing the situation, attempting to kill Dave, Tony gets his revenge. So this movie is Geoffrey Rush and John Lithgow 100%. This guy deserves an absolute honorable mention.
Oh, yeah. He was amazing. Yeah, he was really, really good. And, just as far as, us Americans are concerned, just some New Zealand bit player, who knows.
Again, we have to do a deep dive on who this guy is. But I would say that there's a scene I took note of when John Lithgow is showing Stefan the ropes around here. He's like, oh, it's share and share alike around here. And Stefan says communism always looks most appealing to the people who have the least. There he is with his, intellectual superiority again and his smug arrogance.
Right.
And John Lithgow, Dave just kicks Stefan right under the table.
Oh, yeah.
And he says, you got to watch out for those coffee tables out in the hallway.
Yeah, they'll
get you. Yeah. And he hits him again, and he hits him again, and he hits him again.
Yeah.
And it's that moment where, it builds up to Stefan and Tony being the only ones who are willing to do something about it. Because as Stefan is getting wheeled out of there, Dave is immune from any consequence. And he's like, you're all cowards. Speak up, do something. You're all dead already. Right. Which is now just the horror of this movie spoken out loud.
Right.
But that movie, that scene, and there's a couple of different eating scenes. And I want to talk about the soup very, very quickly for a second, but let me not go off on that tangent before I finish this one up. When he's tormenting him, I would say that this scene is going to rival, if not beat, we can only judge in about 10, 15, 20 years when we look back. It'll rival Robert De Niro and Al Pacino in Heat in the diner scene where we see these 2 phenomenal actors. Now, John Lithgow and Geoffrey Rush may not have the reputation or whatever that Al Pacino and Robert De Niro have, but this movie and this scene, I would say put two adversaries up against each other in any scene and have them come to a head-to-head, I would put this scene up against that.
Yeah.
Blind
Yeah,
and bet on it.
No, it was a great scene. It's
Mm-hmm.
absolutely great scene. I mean, anytime John Lithgow was on the screen, I think I was completely entranced by his portrayal of Dave. Um, you know, everybody did an amazing job. You know, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
trying to take away from anybody else. I'm just saying that there was so much intensity in Dave's character that whenever he was on screen, it was you had 100% of my attention. I was completely immersed from beginning to end. Nothing could pull me out of this movie.
Where we needed Ray Nicholson to be Ray Nicholson to pull off Borderline, we need John Lithgow to be John Lithgow to pull off, not just to pull off this movie, because this movie honestly is so damn flawless, where it doesn't have scary, creative kills. It has methodic, intelligent torment with a little bit of the cognitive blips do add a little bit of a supernatural possibility, or at least a
Oh,
supernatural
sure.
reality going on in his mind. There's a couple moments where
Yeah.
Jenny's head is huge
Yeah, yeah.
from Stefan's perspective.
He loses time as well a couple
Mm-hmm.
times, and you're just like, so you're trying to figure it out along with him.
Mm-hmm.
You know
Right.
what did happen? How long has he been out for? There's a scene where he
Mm-hmm.
blips and the room is full of people, and when he comes to, he's the only one in the room.
There's that great scene, that diner scene. He's got a guy in front of him, and I watched it, and I paused it, and I brought it back. I said, wait, is he still in that pink shirt? And he's still in the same pink shirt. So that's that moment. He blips. That guy who's, he's an NPC. We don't really care about him.
Right,
But then it's Dave in front of him,
right.
and oh shit. And I think it's never mentioned and it's never spoken out loud. He never has a dialogue with himself in the mirror where he says, okay, because the movie just, it's not cheesy in that way. But he
No,
had to have that conversation with himself where he said, okay, something's going on with me. And that's what I spoke about before, where he's accepting where he's at, and he's going
yeah.
to have to man up and be bigger than he's ever been in his life
No,
prior.
the point you just made is exactly why this movie is as good as it is. It has 100% the culmination, the example of show don't tell, and there is no exposition in this movie.
And it's not necessary.
Right, and
They trust the audience to fill in the gaps. You don't have to be a writer to love this movie. You just have to be human and thoughtful, and it will scare
oh
the
yeah,
shit out of you.
oh absolutely. Like I'm thinking about my own mortality watching this movie. I'm thinking about previous experiences with my grandparents in places like this while watching this movie. This is a hard movie to watch.
You are a better man than I am. My health coverage is watching YouTube videos and watching my vegetables. As a 50-year-old man without health coverage. But this movie, people don't want to look at things that are unfortunate, and start looking, because if not, this happens way too often. This is, again, entirely within the realm of possibility.
Well, there's also a great monologue from Lithgow where he tells the judge that he met him before.
Love. Yes. Thank
Yeah,
you for bringing that up.
right?
Love it.
So he met the judge in his early 40s when he was working some kind of party
Second
that
shift at like some kind of catering hall or some shit.
yeah, that the judge was like a keynote speaker at.
Mm-hmm.
And he watched the judge and remembers being in awe of him.
I spent most of my life, I got to my 40s and I achieved diddly squat. And
Yeah.
there you are. And I got to tell you, you had that room in the palm of your hand.
Yeah.
You were inspiring.
But then he goes on to talk about something that's all too real for a lot of us, and is part of the point of the film, and the other part, don't let me forget the poster, is the other part of the movie. So the part is, he wasted those 40 odd years, he says in this monologue. He goes, and then he continued to do nothing since.
Mm-hmm.
Every year of your life is so long. every day of your life.
Yeah.
You can accomplish so much. And here he is, the villain of this piece, telling the hero not to waste life because it's precious. Then he looks at the poster, and the poster says, something about
the cat.
the cat poster. It said,
And it's especially here. This is so right. You don't get old from not playing.
yes, you don't get old.
You don't stop playing because you get old. You get old because you stop playing.
Yes, right. And that was Lithgow saying, when you look at his insanity, his character, he's the only one in the entirety of the people in the home
He's playing.
who isn't moving slowly, who doesn't have a miserable look on their face. Everybody is hunched over slightly and walking slow, if they're walking at all. They're in wheels. A lot of them are in wheelchairs. John Lithgow is dancing, frolicking through crowds of people
Constantly.
Sure, with a doll on his hand, and he's a fucking asshole. Yeah, yeah. But he is playing, and for that he stays young, and he is now, after 80 years, learned how to enjoy his life. And I think that is the moral of the story, and it's very interesting that it comes from the villain in basically like the two scenes before the finale.
There's a lot of especially in superhero movies that are super popular, obviously, there's always a message or a movie to be, Doctor Strange is told by his mentor that it's not all about you. There's a lot of universal life lessons that could be given through the sugar pill of the medium of watching a movie. So to get it here from John Lithgow, don't waste your days, carpe diem, Dead Poet Society, Robin Williams. Don't fuck around, because you're going to wake up one day and you're going to be 40, or you're going to be 50, or you're going to be 80.
Great inspirational quote I read once was, 2 years from now, you'll wish you started today.
Amen.
And you could say that for anything. Like, man, I wish I was in better shape. Well, I could start working out today, or in 2 years from now, I could look back and go, man, I really should have started working out 2 years ago, that day that I had that thought.
But that, not to go off into like a philosophical, metaphysical quasi-conversation over here, but your future you is waiting for you to show up, and they're being so fucking patient. And that is actually a great segue into the note that I have about this this sequence that we're talking about, where he's given this judge this speech. So he's been waiting for him. He's been waiting for him because of that classist disparity that they have. And he's been waiting for him. Oh, God, one day I just hope you show up at Royal Pines, where I'm like busting my ass. I'm scrubbing floors. I'm wiping people's asses. I can't wait to wipe your ass, buddy. Like, I cannot wait. So he says, I don't have the will, and I don't have the brains or the luck. He says, but I have been advantaged with time, which is another way of saying he's patient. And it reminds me of Morgan Freeman's line in Seven, where he says, worst of all, the killer is patient. So that's part of the horror that Dave Crealy brings, is that he'll wait. And he doesn't, everybody dislikes him. The two scenes that we get when he's not there, everybody's happier. The cloud is gone.
Yeah.
But there is a scene where nobody knows. There's just some guy we've never seen before, looking for the shadow. Everybody's looking for that shadow under the door to see if it's Dave to have Jenny visit them or not. And that's part of the horror, is that we don't know if it's going to be Tony and Stefan necessarily. But there is one scene where it's Who Rules 2.0, where we get the verbalization of lick her asshole, and Stefan fights back, and he says, I'm not talking to no fucking puppet. He's like, that's fair enough. And Stefan spits on Jenny. He might as well spit right in Dave's face.
Yep.
Because like Dave feels it. So it's not like he's not assaulting Stefan when he spits back at him, but it's an act of petulance. It's an act of weakness. It's not an act of aggression and abuse. Well, it is, but that's not the intention behind it. It's revenge.
Right.
Stefan still has a leg up on him until we get to Who Rules 3.0. Stefan is defeated. Dave's got him. And I think it's after that scene where Georgie was being changed, or before then. Not exactly sure of the sequence.
It's definitely after he hit him, because after he hit him, he kind of goes into this kind of maybe they're drugging him a little more than normal because of the outburst, and he's in this like, now I'm a week old recovering person as opposed to normal Stefan at this point. And that's when Lithgow gets to and he just does it. He says, "Who rules?" and Geoffrey Rush just says, "Jenny Penn." He can barely say it though, say it, and then he licks Jenny's asshole.
Who Rules 1.0 and 2.0 is so difficult to watch, non-verbalized, then verbalized, but it doesn't hit home for Stefan yet. And then for 3.0, when it does hit home for him, so hard to watch. And I had to intellectually turn on my writer brain and say, okay, the revenge has to come.
Yeah.
This movie cannot end with this guy just becoming a turnip and just disappearing. Like, no.
Although that would be a Stephen King ending.
That would be a Stephen King ending, which if I didn't, I know I spoke to you about it before the show. My Stephen King conspiracy theory for this movie, if you want to get eyeballs to it, have Stephen King recommend it. The cat in the movie, just like Dr. Sleep was. There's a couple of other references. The song that's playing during the end credits is called Misery. There's just a couple things here that Stephen King would really, really enjoy.
He wrote a glowing recommendation for this movie.
Because it was almost picked from his brain. It was one little segment of his brain, and then it was just stretched out. And the writer, Owen Marshall, I believe, wrote the short story, The Rule of Jenny Penn. And then, the writers of the film that adapted that and then decided to dive in. What would this movie look like if it was a series, and would you be able to watch it? This is my question for you, Haas.
Oh, a series. Okay. Well,
where we go even slower, even deeper, and we get to see the day by day, hour by hour.
So we'll probably do a BBC series. So we're talking like 6 episodes with a definitive end. So there's no season 2. And I think Stefan's decline would just have to be stretched out. Then the body count would go up, right? Because we'd have to have more of a mystery of who's doing this, and now maybe Stefan and Tony are definitely like, it's got to be Dave. It's got to be Dave. And so that's probably how they would ramp it up a little bit and stretch it out for 6 episodes.
Well, going into this movie, I didn't know anything about it, and when I first met, Stefan and Tony, and they're at odds because of just typical stuff. And he does request to be in his own room. If he actually got that request, and if the administrator, who's not an asshole, she does follow up with Dave about Stefan's complaint. Not that detail matters, but I paid attention to it. So thankfully he's not given his request of being put in his own room because he winds up getting his eventual partner. But in the beginning, when he's more adversarial than friendly, and there's a great moment after they take care of Dave when Stefan is just touching Tony's face. It's so human. It's so great. And it gives you a little something to watch this movie down with, a little bit of humanity after all the perpetual realistic horror and terror that's in this movie. But in the beginning, I didn't know who Dave was. I just thought he was this weird, I didn't even recognize him from that first weird, creepy thing outside the door to when he shows up later with Jenny. I thought maybe he was going to ally himself alongside him. And then it doesn't happen, and he gives a great scene. He's like, I was going to debase myself by throwing you a compliment or two, but you have 0 positive attributes in that great diner scene.
Yeah.
Which I just want to mention, just as like an offshoot. There's one scene where we're getting introduced to how the facility works, what life is like there, what the environment is, and Dave takes soup, I think it's soup, from Olive, and they're being served by Joy, the woman who works there, because I watched this 4 times, so I got all their names. And Joy comes by and says, no, Dave, there's no sharing.
No sharing.
If you want more soup, I'll get you more soup. So what does that tell me? That tells me it's not about the fucking soup.
Yeah.
It's about the power. Just like rape is not about sex. It's a crime because it's an act of force and gross abuse. That's what this scumbag is doing throughout the entire film. He is exerting his force over everybody else. He can walk up, get more fucking soup, and Olive can eat her soup. No. He gets pissed off.
And he
Don't
just
come
takes
near my
them all.
doll.
Yeah.
Waits for her to walk away, and this bitch, and goes and gets his, because in his mind it's his soup.
He just takes it instead of trading the empty bowl for it the second time. He just takes it and puts it right into his empty bowl. And that scene was crazy. It was an insight into a little bit about how you said the spitting in the face was an act of petulance, and revenge and anger, and also just like, no, you don't tell me what to do in my place.
How dare you?
How dare you? I'm taking what's mine, and that soup is fucking mine.
Yeah, because if he did have will, brains, and luck, he would have been the rightful administrator, quite possibly owner at this time, of Royal Pines Mews Care Facility.
Right, exactly.
But he didn't want that. He just wants to run it his way. Like an asshole.
Like an asshole. The Rule of Jenny Pen. I gave it an 8.
I still give it a 9.
All right. And that concludes this episode of the podcast for the recently deceased. Check us out, BasementMedia.Online.
And darkclawstudios.com.
Absolutely. Never forget the darkclawstudios.com. Thanks for watching. I'm the boss HOS4A2.
I'm Stephen Anthony. Guys, we could talk so much about this movie. Go watch it. Go. It's not an easy thing to watch, but you will enjoy it. And it doesn't have the usual horror movie comedy, up, down, scary kills, but what it does in its place will keep you bolted to your chair. Definitely worth it. Every accolade that this movie is getting, people talking about it, being one of the best movies of these gentlemen's career. They are also the executive producers of it, so that they care and they cared about it. And it's more about the social whatever of talking about the nature of these facilities and putting it in an entertaining vehicle. This movie is really, really frightening. Absolutely recommend. 1.5 thumbs up.
And that's our time. Thanks for tuning in.
I got hot speechless.
Thanks for tuning in to the podcast for the recently deceased, and we will see you next time.
Later, guys.